Hey everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is the First Berserker Khazan. The First Berserker Khazan is a game by South Korean developer Neepal and published by Nexon. It's received a lot of attention for its visuals and challenging gameplay since its release. But can this Souls-like stand next to other well-known and respected titles? Let's find out by first going over the gameplay. The gameplay of the First Berserker Khazan is classified as a Souls-like, but actually takes a lot of inspiration from both Dark Souls and NIOH. As you can imagine, the game is unforgiving and difficult. However, the game also highly encourages you to keep bashing your head against the brick wall that may be a boss fight. This is due to how you keep getting experience when fighting bosses, even if you lose against them, and won't have to grab your souls, or in this case lacrima, in the middle of the boss room. Loot also has a heavy focus, encouraging you to go back and fight bosses to farm the gear they drop over and over again as you play the game. With a name like the First Berserker, combat also has a lot of aggressive style to it. The game heavily rewards an aggressive playstyle, risk versus reward style, with a berserk mechanic as well to further change combat. And there are lots of different abilities that you can invest in to change your approach to combat drastically. With such a focus on gameplay, how is the story in comparison? The story of the First Berserker Khazan takes place in a war-torn world with supernatural forces alongside rugged, unforgiving landscapes. You play as Khazan, a once loyal soldier of a tribe who is now destined to die. On death's door, a powerful ghost possesses Khazan and attempts to gain control of his body. Will he succumb, or will he fight back and find his own path once again? But now the question still stands. Pause or repeat? If this is the first Berserker, I wonder if there'll ever be a second Berserker.
Yes.
Because they hit it out of the park with this one. This is a great game. I'm just going to say it outright. But what do you think, Chris?
Well, also extremely frustrating too. But, kind of just really to set up the presence with this game. You ever wonder what happens when you save an empire only to be rewarded with betrayal, exile, and some light tendon snipping? You only know what I'm talking about if you jump right on into the First Berserker Khazan, a hardcore action RPG set 800 years before the Dungeon Fighter Online. So Khazan was once a hero, but thanks to some jealous backstabbers, and I'm looking at you, the Emperor, he found himself framed for treason and left to rot in the snowy mountains. Luckily, a ghostly entity called Blade Phantom saw his broken body and said to him, Henrik, hey, well, you seem kind of angry enough to make this kind of work out. So bound by that supernatural pack, Khazan embarks on a brutal revenge tour, cutting through conspiracies, imperial forces, and anyone dumb enough to stand in his way.
Yes, and all the while, it's Souls-like gameplay. So you get to choose your weapon, you get to go fight a bunch of hard enemies, hard bosses. But the thing about it is, yes, it is going to be a difficult time. It's not an easy game by any means of the imagination.
Yeah.
But the moment that you're really going to be waiting for is the moment when you finally beat that boss that has been crushing you into the ground 15 times in a row. When you finally get that moment, that moment of ecstasy of beating that boss, it feels so amazing, especially when the combat just in general feels great. It has a really crunchy and visceral feel to it. Just all the weapons feel like they have weight behind them. And I mean,
yeah.
I really liked using the greatsword. That's my typical go-to in this kind of game, and greatsword feels great in this game. Like, actually great, as the name implies.
No, yeah, absolutely, Henrik. And I think what, the storytelling in this game really kind of sets it up for that kind of combat that you are going to receive when you play this kind of style of game, as you've been referencing NIOH and, Dark Souls-like games. You got to really be into that kind of style of genre if you're really going to be investing in this game. If you're not, kind of like someone like myself who, kind of grudges at playing these kind of style of games because I just want to keep my controller intact. I don't really want to test the durability. But, I just love Khazan. He was once the Emperor's golden boy, taking down a fearsome dragon and then earning hero status. But as history has taught us, the only thing people love more than a hero is tearing one down. So thanks to a jealous emperor with serious insecurity issues, Khazan goes full barbarian mode. He's slicing, he's smashing, he's skewering his way through enemies with a very smooth combat play with revenge on his mind, and it's opening up the game to test your patience, test your skills, and possibly all things when it comes to your controller.
Yeah, and the story, it really is kind of a standard revenge story when you really break it down and analyze it. But it works here because the whole point of the game is the combat, and you really feel for Khazan because, like you're saying, he was a legendary hero for his whole like country, and they just turned their back on him essentially and said, "No, you know what? We're gonna put treason charges on you and everything." And of course, someone in that position would be pissed.
Yeah.
I'd say this guy is about as mad as the Doom Slayer from Doom is. And when you compare the two, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Well,
shows that this game really does actually have some merit in telling the story of an angry, pissed off person.
yeah, I think you're nailing it. I mean, I think Souls-like, but with even more anger management issues. I mean, every
Hmm.
hit you land drains both the health and stamina from enemies. So you break their will and you get to unleash a really cool, brutal attack that refills your own stamina. But you got to be careful when you play these kind of style of games because the same rules apply to you. What do I
Yep.
mean by that? You
Risk
run out of
versus
stamina.
reward.
Yeah, right, exactly. You
Yep.
run out of stamina, you're about as useless as a training dummy. Like you're not gonna go
Yeah.
anywhere. And Kazan's arsenal is just as intense as his vendetta. I know you were saying you like the great sword. They
Hmm.
introduce you really early on in the beginning of the game, the dual wielding, which lets him zip around like an
Yeah.
unhinged blender, while the great sword turns him into an unstoppable wrecking ball. But I find, the spears, those are a really, really cool element to the game. They are perfect for picking apart enemies from a distance, and it really
Yes.
helps with, draining their stamina before delivering their final blow at you.
No, yeah, definitely. There's just so many different weapons you can choose from, and they really give you the keys to the kingdom in that
But didn't you think it kind of
regard.
sucked a little bit though, Henry? I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, like in Bloodborne games, you get to kind of switch in between, like the weapon arsenals. You
Mm,
can only have one at a time. That was a little annoying. Did
yeah.
you find that? I mean, it's
Well,
not a
yeah,
total
yeah,
knock, but it was just like,
yeah. It's
man,
it's not
really?
a it's not the end of the world for me because
Yeah.
typically when I play a game that's a Souls like, I end up finding a weapon I like anyways, and then
Oh, okay.
just basically stick to it the whole time through. I might respec a couple times here and there just to try things out and see if there's something else I like, but
Fair.
I'm
Okay.
not really too worried about having to have the ability to switch between a couple different weapons. I'm gonna make it work
Yeah.
regardless.
Oh,
Yeah, but
absolutely.
do you have any takeaways about like how this game sets itself apart from other Souls likes? Maybe.
I don't know if it's so much that it sets itself apart from anything. In fact, it really just kind of, adds to that genre of Souls-like games. So I don't think this game is going to fit for everybody. In fact, it's not going to work out for everybody. If you don't like the style of games where you got to revisit a boss maybe 13 or 64 times, and this might not be for you because this isn't just a quest for survival. It's a path to reclaim everything that was stolen. And I think that's why the story works so well with these kind of style of gameplay, because you think about it, the Emperor and his cronies wanted Khazan erased from history. So why make it easy on you? So now they're about to become part of his legend. And the only question is, are you ready to embrace that rage? And so
Well, I mean, at least, yeah, you do have to go back and do a lot of bosses, but at least they don't make you go through the entire level to go back to a boss. You can go
yeah, fair
straight
enough.
there. Yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, absolutely. But I know I'm kind of curious on how you're vibing with this game, Henrik. What's the verdict?
Oh, this is a definite repeat. Not only because, yeah, you can replay it in a second playthrough, a new game plus mode does exist in this game, and it does have more features than the base playthrough. But aside from even just that, just playing from scratch, I think this is a game that, if you really like Souls likes, this is a game that you're going to want to keep your eyes on and pick up as soon as you can. You're going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you too as well. I was kind of like hanging on. It was almost like a broken tail or like a hanging toenail in a
Mhm.
sense. I was almost about to say pause, but it is a repeat. Once you like start to gradually, get used to the gameplay after a couple hours in, you really get invested into it.
Yeah.
And like I said before, there's three different types of, style of weapon kind of combat gameplay, and so that really kind of opens up the doors for replayability, and you're really going to
Mhm.
love this game. The First Berserker is fantastic. I highly recommend it, and you're hearing it from both of us. Wow, why do we always keep constantly agreeing? Maybe we just know our shit. Maybe we just know what you the
Maybe.
gamers need in the end.